Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. And the thing about the year of Shakespeare, which was great, it just about killed me, but I got to decide. I was the decider, as those of you who know George W. Bush says. And so one of the things was I really wanted there to be an herbarium exhibit. That was one of the things that I was intent on. I also really wanted a Shakespeare garden, and that didn't happen. We tried and it didn't happen. But the herbarium exhibit was really quite extraordinary and is still available for people to see. And the reason that I wanted it is because one of the joys of Shakespeare is that everything shows up in Shakespeare. It just, you can take it in all kinds of different directions. And in the classroom, I get a lot of students who are not English majors. And there's been an increasing number who come in and tell me they hate Shakespeare. And they're there because of the writing requirement, or they're there because the other English course looked worse. And so that they're just going to be there and tough it out. And one of the things that I talk to them about that I think is really important is that as everybody in this room knows, Emory students are amazing. They know a lot of things, they work hard, they do great things. And so I say, I really want you to bring into the classroom what you know. And I then want you to try things that scare you. So I want you to work from your strengths, and I want you to work from your weaknesses both. And so with botany, one of the things that's wonderful about that is that I get all these pre-med students, some of whom are biology and some of whom are chemistry, and I'll tell you a little bit about both of them. But it really does open up some great opportunities to have them bring their scientific knowledge into the classroom in ways that I couldn't do. And for example, and I will show you some of the images, but first I want to talk about Emory students because they're so amazing. There is, for example, in Midsummer Night's Dream, there's two sets of lovers, and two of the men love the same woman, and one of the women is left out. And Oberon, who's the king of the fairies, feels badly for her, and he sends Puck to go get this flower that if you take the juice from the flower, put it in the eyes, then whoever has it in their eyes, they'll fall in love with whoever they next see. And that's when Titania, the queen of the fairies, she wakes up and sees Bottom, who's been transformed into an ass, and she falls in love with him. So that's the joke there. But with the science students, I can have them go out and say, okay, tell me about this plant. Find out about this plant. And they go out and do the research, and they come back and say, these are the plants that people knew in Shakespeare's time, and this is what may have happened, and this is what we learn about the plants in the play, and this is what we know about plants from the time, and pull it together. I also had a student, again with Puck, when he had to go get the flower, he said that he was going to fly around the world in 40 minutes and bring back the flower. Well, I had a science student who determined he was going to do the math to determine whether Puck could fly around the world in 40 minutes and not hit escape velocitude and be sent out of the solar system. Now, I can't do that math, but my students can. And it's one of the reasons why I really wanted to partner with the herbarium. And I'll show you some of the plants that we highlighted. Columbine is very important. So Columbine, and I'm sure you all have Hamlet memorized, so you will remember that when Ophelia comes and gives out her flowers, she says, "There's fennel for you and columbines." Plants are very important in lots of Shakespeare's plays, but they're particularly important in Hamlet. And one of the reasons that they are important is that there are two premises at work in Hamlet. One is that Ophelia is a virgin. Another is that Ophelia is pregnant. Most people would believe that there are some differences between someone being a virgin and someone being pregnant. And one of the reasons that this comes up is because when Ophelia has her mad scene and she's giving out plants, she's giving out plants that were used as abortion inducements during Shakespeare's lifetime. That's another kind of investigation that I can have my science students look at that my English major students would run screaming out of the room. But I want to read you a little bit about Columbine and give you a sense of what happens in the plays. So Ophelia says, "There's fennel for you and columbines." And she's giving a list of plants that she's going to put out in honor of her father who's been murdered. And fennel was a herb that was used for a number of medical problems. It was used, for example, it was added to liquid to help eyesight, or to get rid of kidney stones. The roots could be boiled and put in wine to treat dropsy. You know, dropsy is one of those things that I think everybody back in the earlier parts of the world had. Columbine was found in a lot of hedgerows and gardens, and there were lots of different names for it, which has some interesting gender characteristics. Other names were often connected with clothes: granny's bonnet, fool's cap, old woman's nightcap, or footwear, boots and shoes, shoes and stockings. So I don't know whether that looks like an old granny's nightcap to you or not. But it was also one of the flowers that was connected with the Virgin and was called Our Lady's shoes. And it was said that when Mary, Jesus' mother, was going to visit her cousin Elizabeth, that when she walked along the path, that where her feet went, columbine popped up. So, and they would mix the seed with saffron and wine for liver problems and for jaundice, and they'd be used for decorations. So that gives you just one example. The plants, and one of the things that I try to bring out for my students is that the material world was very present during Shakespeare's time, and that they had face-to-face access to things. You know, people were in the room for birth, they were in the room for death, you know, they were there, and the plants weren't just something out there, that people knew plants, they knew a lot about plants. Now, one of the things that we don't know, Shakespeare got a lot of his plant knowledge from an herbalist named John Gerard, and there's recently been a theory that he and Shakespeare actually were very close friends. I don't know that that's true, but it may be. But the argument lists a lot of with Shakespeare, there's all of these conspiracy theories, you know, and there's all of these, if you read it backwards and hold it up to the sun, you'll see that it's actually got them standing next to each other. But that, so I don't know how well Shakespeare knew Gerard, but he certainly, if you've been to Stratford-upon-Avon, or if you've ever been to any small town in the countryside, there's no way that Shakespeare can't have been familiar with flowers. So poppies, show up in Othello, and Iago, who's the villain in Othello, as you may know, says, "Not poppy nor mandragora, nor all the drowsy syrups of the world, shall ever medicine thee to that sweet sleep which thou owest yesterday." So this, and what's interesting here, is that Iago is making Othello suspicious. So he's using the terms about the poppies rather than administering an opiate to Othello. But the narcotic properties of the opium poppy had been known for a long time. People knew that that was a characteristic. And according to one of the Greek legends, Demeter, who was the goddess of the harvest, took the poppy fruit to calm herself down when her daughter Persephone was kidnapped by Hades. And these, again, the Greek myths would have been well known to Shakespeare, so he would have known that story. The poppy came to England from Southern Europe in the Middle Ages, but it didn't become really popular in England until Shakespeare's time period, because they brought a double-flowered poppy over from Constantinople. And perhaps some of the botanists can tell me why a double-flowered poppy would be more popular. I can't tell you that. But there are, and at the time there was a belief that there was a difference in poppies between, that there were those that created opium and those that do not. And that is one of the things that Shakespeare's contemporaries would have believed. So I don't have any, I got images. There is this wonderful Botanical Shakespeare, which has this fabulous set of drawings, which I have no artistic ability at all, but Eloise Carter, who's the botanist at Oxford College, she and her daughter have done the series of botanical drawing classes at the Botanical Garden and have done amazing things. So this is a book that, it's got marjoram right here, but all it's got are the quotes, and so from the play, but it's got some wonderful drawings. So I thought, instead of telling you about marjoram, that I would tell you about potatoes. Marjoram and potatoes are almost identical, right? We're on the other side of campus, what do we know? So Falstaff says, "Let the sky rain potatoes. Let it thunder to the tune of greensleeves, hail kissing comfits, and snow orangoes." Just love it. Let the sky rain potatoes. I mean, what a thing. And what he's talking about is, he is, in Merry Wives of Windsor, which you may or may not be familiar with, Falstaff, who was the big fat drunkard in Henry IV Part 1 and Henry IV Part 2, he actually dies in Henry V. And the story is, do you remember how Sherlock Holmes died and then he came back? Same thing happened to Falstaff. Apparently, Queen Elizabeth loved Falstaff. The story goes, it's probably urban legend, but that she was really upset that he died, and she demanded of Shakespeare that he bring Falstaff back, and she wanted to see Falstaff in love. So Shakespeare had this play where there's two wealthy middle-class women in Windsor, and they're best friends. John Falstaff comes up with the brilliant idea that he's going to seduce both of them, and he sends them each the same love letter. but with different names in the subject line. Somehow this didn't work out well. But he is looking forward, he's wanting to have a romantic assignation, so he's thinking about the sky raining potatoes. And what this is representing is that this was a time of huge exploration. And so the normal person in England would barely go beyond a couple of miles from where they were born. At the same time that people were traveling around the world and exploring new areas. In my Shakespeare class, we're studying Macbeth this week, and there's a sailor there who goes to Aleppo. And that's one of the ways that I always test whether my students are reading the New York Times, because when I ask them where is Aleppo, they either know or they don't, and if you don't know, you need to look it up. But this is a time when a lot of plants and foods were coming in from different places. Potatoes were one of them. They were coming in, some people believe that potatoes were coming from South America through Europe. Other people think they were coming straight, that we don't really know. But we do have records of potatoes coming to England in 1564. So, and potatoes were an aphrodisiac. So, so for Falstaff, wanting to have the sky rain potatoes was going to make the chances of his romantic alliance with these two women much more likely to happen. If you don't know the play, instead, and this, if somebody is trying to seduce you and you're not interested, they put him in a basket with their dirty laundry, they carried him to the creek, and they threw him in. So that's your tip for the day. But again, the plants are throughout Shakespeare. And one of the things that I'm really excited about with the herbarium is that it gives the students a sense of the scientific importance of the plants. We look at the historic importance, the literary importance, and it brings the material world into their literary studies in ways that I think make both subjects more interesting and appealing. So I'm thrilled to be involved with the herbarium. Thank you.